everyone. All right, let's have to wake up. I think I'm awake, but I don't think my laptop's awake, so. Yeah, especially since you're awake since like 4 a.m. It's definitely overrated. Okay. Okay, great. Well, thanks again for everybody for being me here at this time and being awake like I am, as awake as I am. And thank you for ATypI for inviting me. It's always a privilege and a nervous state of presence when I'm around people who are kind of designing the typefaces I use every day and know the history of every serif and every kerning and every technology in the background. But so far, so good. So let's see. So Renovating Tradition, Nastaʿlīq Script in the Digital Age is my presentation. And as everybody has done, which I think is the important thing, I would like to acknowledge the Turrbal and the Jagera people, traditional custodians of this land, who we're meeting on, and pay my respects to all the elders, past and present, emerging as they hold the memories, traditions, and culture of this land, country, and nation. And I extend my respect to all the First Nations people who may be present. I would like to further acknowledge that across the globe, as recently as today, colonizers and those in power continue to forcibly displace communities from their homelands, leaving behind a trail of destruction and trauma. I would like to acknowledge that this is happening mostly unopposed by the majority of contemporary society, and that we will be held guilty in the eyes of history as bystanders. Lastly, I urge you to consider what is it that you can do, each onto your own, beyond simple acknowledgements, to break this chain of inaction. Okay. I'm going to give you guys a few seconds to think about that. All right. Let's see. I'm pressing these buttons. So we'll start with a brief history. And a part of the presentation is cultural preservation, about kind of preserving the Persian culture and Nastaʿlīq and other scripts, thinking about process and art, or art as process, if you want to think about it. Technological craft, which is the kind of the digital part of the presentation. And horizons ahead, a little bit of a speech about what may be coming. I'm still trying to get used to these two screens. I don't know which one to look at, but I think I can look at both of them. All right, so I'm from Iran, all the way across the world. I was trying to find a map that I can show Iran and Australia and USA. I think this kind of suffices for that. Some may think of Iran as a land of kind of ancient history and kind of a lot of colorful kind of ornamentations and kind of crazy diverse geographies. And of course, right now, a lot of occupying the media with kind of violent actions against other players around the world. I remember this as my childhood more than any of those things. And I have to mention $6 Million Man, my insight into, wow, this is what may be coming in the future, and a little bit of a crush on Lindsay Wagner up there. And I'll be lying if I don't say I was a comic addict, and probably my love of graphic design really started back then. Kind of the forms that they had on their chests and what it meant. And of course, I've been in no back time that a lot of them were from the West, but they were still amazing regardless. And yes, I was surrounded by kind of calligraphy and poetry and history, kind of ancient culture. Right around 1979, when the Iranian Revolution happened, kind of all those things changed a little bit, or quite a bit, I should say. A war that started with our neighbor in Iraq after the Iranian Revolution kind of took things in a different path, and I migrated to UK and then to United States, where I'm at right now. As was said before, I am an Oklahoma State University professor, and I teach there. And it was interesting looking at the maps, like, wow, by being in Oklahoma and Iran and Australia, I've kind of gone to the edges of the world. Okay, so let's go to the kind of history mode. So Persian Empire, long time ago, supposedly the vastest empire that existed in 550 BC. One of the inscriptions that they used at the time was Pahlavi inscription. These are some of the reminiscence of that script. 633 to 654, there was a number of kind of conflicts with the Islamic Empire, which kind of came from Saudi Arabia, and eventually the conquest of Persia and the fall of the Persian Empire was the result of that. And as we all know, Kufic script was the kind of preferred script of the Islamic Empire. It was the script that was chosen to represent the Word of God for Quran, and therefore that was where everything that had to be communicated through the eyes of the Islamic Empire had to be communicated. Different variations of that, as we know, this is the Maghrebi Kufic script that came along that had diacritical marks that could be better saving their pronunciations, but still quite a bit different from the Pahlavi script. And in addition to that, 4 characters that existed before, or 4 sounds, you could say, that existed in the Persian language could not be found in the Arabic alphabet. So the 4 characters, P, J, J, and G, were added by adding just different diacritical marks to the shapes that already existed. Therefore, what you may have heard, like the Perso-Arabic alphabet was kind of created at the time. So these are the characters there. As many kind of structures work in Arabic alphabet is you add diacritical marks, and by 1 mark, the whole sound changes. So no new shapes had to be created, just simple diacritical marks resulted in a whole new alphabet that could be used by the kind of Persian language. So this is a kind of basic listing and some images that show the important developments in the Arabic scripts. And there was somewhat of a race, you could say, at the time that who can come up with the most beautiful script to communicate the Word of God. What could be more important than that? Illustrations are not that important. Kind of patterns and textures are maybe okay, but the best script that can communicate the Word of God will deserve the highest prize. So hence the variety of scripts that we have seen and we're familiar with. And also the beauty of those scripts were more of a priority than its legibility. Over time, as educational institutions communicated those and people were trained, we could read them. I can read all these scripts. But initially, their readability was not as important as when the sign is on the wall, somebody walks in that space, they knows this is a space of God, because it's just beauty is all over it. A mosque that you enter, even nowadays, if you've been to a mosque, you can see the scripts communicate that aesthetics that is kind of beyond human. So after the conquest of Persia, contemporary Iran, by the Islamic Empire, there was a movement to preserve Persian culture in any which way possible. A lot of literary works were done, a lot of artists and writers and poets who worked for the kings who were in power, most of them from the kind of the Arabic culture. They brought their services forward so they could flourish and obviously stay alive, but also conduct research, also strengthen their kind of stories that they want to tell about what is happening in history, what is happening in culture. And some of the most memorable and you could say kind of respected words of literary and poetry was developed at that time. Rudaki, Ferdowsi, Saadi, Rumi, these are all works that even as we speak now, they're kind of collected. Some of them they're still being researched, still being analyzed. So there was a kind of underlying layer of development and research in Persian culture while being governed by kind of the kind of Arabic dominant powers at the time, which eventually shifted as people who were born that could speak Arabic in the Arabic spaces, but they were from Iran. They rose to power and kind of maintained the kind of presence of kind of Persian culture all the way up to the governance. So in that space of creativity, cultural preservation, poetry, literary developments is where Nastaʿlīq script was developed. Nastaʿlīq is a mixture of Naskh script and Taʿlīq script. A lot of stories about this, but the basic myth goes that Mir Ali Tabrizi, who is given the credit for creating the Nastaʿlīq script, he had a dream that there were these flying geeses, and he was directed by the Messenger of God, Muhammad, to create a new script that has the similarities and familiarities like nature, like flying birds, geeses. And that's where Nastaʿlīq was born. There's no kind of official written kind of memoirs from him or some journal that he actually, that's what happened. But is there a great story or he actually told somebody about it? Lots of other calligraphers came and enhanced the script. That would be a whole different presentation. But probably one of the most respected ones that came a few hundred years afterwards is Mir Ahmad Hassani. And he was an artist, he was a teacher, and he took the kind of script that was more functional and still aesthetic to its aesthetic levels and heights that we're all familiar with. One unique aspect of Nastaʿlīq is that it was used for poetry and not religious purposes. It was very much intended to bring the aesthetics of kind of romanticization, imagination, art, and that was significantly different from the purpose of all the other scripts that existed before that. So it somewhat kind of went back to kind of what the Persian culture was before the dominance of the Islamic Empire, and indirectly kind of using Arabic alphabet and Arabic script, but a script that looks quite different and it's non-religious. Up to, I would say maybe about 20 years ago, there wasn't even a Quran that was written in Nastaʿlīq because they thought Nastaʿlīq is not meant to be kind of that in that holy script zone. So I don't want to analyze all aspects of Arabic alphabet because I know a lot of you guys already know those very well, so I didn't want to bore anybody. But probably one of the most unique things is the aesthetics that Nastaʿlīq script brings forward. The calligrapher is given the license or perhaps the directive to make a beautiful composition. It's given the tools, the kashidas, the movements, the kind of diacritical marks that could be moving, but the responsibility is the composition needs to look beautiful. So that is the kind of the prime directive. And as a result, as you can imagine, some things we're looking at there does not quite go well with, definitely not well with metal type structure, but even with the kind of digital approach is not quite in what perhaps softwares would like it to be. And of course, a lot of development has been done with the kind of amazing work of engineers and software developers, and that's still continuing. Also on that note, if you see up there the baseline, if you could call it that, it's not meant to be kind of straight. It's meant to have a movement. Almost somewhat of like maybe like a Nike mark that at the end, there's a little bit of a kind of higher curve that kind of comes up. And I'm yet to see how that could actually take place other than one software that we'll talk about that has been able to make that happen. So this is a little kind of quick video just to kind of see if it's going to play, hopefully. So the nib of the reed pen with Nastaʿlīq, when it hits the paper, it doesn't stay flat. It kind of sometimes moves on its point and becomes sharp and thin, and then it kind of moves back and becomes flat. And that movement by itself, the thick and thinning of the stroke, is something that the calligrapher has control over and has training over, which again is what makes it even quite difficult for softwares to try to replicate that. It definitely, you can see it has a somewhat of an illustration approach to it. You kind of stop, you add more, you look, and you see how the composition is looking, and then you stretch it more, you continue it. It's not quite a fluid, like one hand writing and then it's over with. You kind of keep going back and forth with it. So there's definitely this artistic approach towards writing it. It's not simply a script. It's kind of a work of art, you could say. As I said, the read is important. How it's cut, its thickness dictates the thickness of the script. So although we have typefaces that kind of think of, we are labeled bold or light Nastaʿlīq, if you want to think about it, but Nastaʿlīq calligraphy itself did not have kind of bold or not. It was, if the nib was thick, it would be thicker. If it was thinner, it would be thinner. There's no, you can't take a thin one and just kind of manually make it thicker. And kind of the laws are quite numerous, and to become a master Nastaʿlīq calligrapher, you have to go from so many levels. These are just some kind of diagrams on how different parts are measured with the nib itself, the angle that the pen is held. I've taken numerous classes in Nastaʿlīq. Every time I go to Iran, I take one more. I still don't dare do Nastaʿlīq in front of somebody who knows how to do it right, because mine's kind of Pouya's version of creative Nastaʿlīq. You know, I kind of take it towards the world of graphic design, if anything, than to do a proper Nastaʿlīq. And I've interviewed masters of Nastaʿlīq, and they kind of say, don't try to be a perfect Nastaʿlīq. We've done that. We've mastered Nastaʿlīq. You don't need to do that. Just know what it's about. Be inspired. Do interesting things with it, please. Don't try to become another master. Thank you. The majority of tutorials, whether in person or books, they refer to this curves of nature in Nastaʿlīq, whether it's a specific leaf or different birds. Kind of maybe goes back to the flying geese of Mirza Tabrizi that echoes the kind of correctness, like if it feels natural, if there's curves, it feels like a neck of the bird, or feels like the chest of the red-chested swallow or something like that, then it's correct. So whether without the metaphorical approach by nature, if you could learn Nastaʿlīq or not, I'm sure that there's ways around that, but to me it always was interesting to know that I'm trying to learn something calligraphically that is being echoed in nature. The research continues across the world in kind of looking at different scripts. I think we're just at the beginning of being able to analyze ancient Nastaʿlīq scripts. Simply the technology of being able to scan a Arabic or Persian calligraphy piece and have it be anything more than a beautiful image has not been around to be able to kind of do that. And that's one of the things that I think is exciting to see where we go with that. Iran has a very active Institute of Calligraphy that is one of the things that I could perhaps say, like the current regime that has plenty of problems we can all think of, has pushed that as a cultural activity, and they have developed it quite beyond what I had seen when I was a kid. And it's lots of galleries, a lot of exhibitions, courses, competitions, which encourage students and average people to work with that script. One interesting aspect that I have not done scientific research on, but I've spoken to some calligraphers, that in average script in Iran that's referred to as Tahriri script, there is this echoing of Nastaʿlīq grammar and structure. So just by taking a pen and writing a note, this is what it looks like. And I'm so jealous because I was not in Iran to go through that training as a child. I left Iran at 11. And this is not necessarily Nastaʿlīq script, but as you can see, there is definitely this structure and resemblance to what we see in Nastaʿlīq. The fact that after this, if you want to become a calligrapher, you would take kind of specialized calligraphy courses and you become that, I think it's not a coincidence that you can, when you have this training and you're taught that this is how you can do it, this is how you can place them, this is how you can stretch them, and then if you're interested, you can become a calligrapher. I think there's definitely a kind of harmony there. I'm interested to look more into that, the effects of the kind of making this a normal script, an everyday script, even as you see in a elementary school when you're first learning your alphabet, you're using that script. Nastaʿlīq is being used in a lot of artwork, and sculptural work has been developed across the time, and these are specifically Paris Tanavoli is probably our kind of claim to fame. This is his sculptures that are being sold for like thousands of dollars, and the largest one that he just did about 5-6 years ago is this giant piece of calligraphy. Probably that I dare anybody to find a larger calligraphy sculpture anywhere. This is in Vancouver. Let's see. When I was trying to put this presentation together, I'm talking to colleagues, one of the things that I realized an indirect effect of technology on Nastaʿlīq is that it's exposure. That technology has allowed people across the world to understand not just Nastaʿlīq script, but other scripts. But beyond understanding, they can take courses, and they can learn it, and they can practice it, and become familiar with it through the scripts. You can get to know a culture very well. So this is a colleague of mine, Peyman Ahmed, that he started teaching Nastaʿlīq before pandemic, and through his online system. As you can see, he's got a little camera, and his students are from all over the world. Actually, his best students are not Iranians, from Poland, from China, from the US, of course. And I think when we talk about the effect of technology on an Nastaʿlīq script, I think part of it is it's become more known and more appreciated. And I think that's no small task. Anybody's interested, you can go to his website. He's not taking any students now. I'm in line, by the way. But he said he's going to open up soon. You're probably familiar with the app Procreate. If you have an iPad and you're kind of in the kind of creative zone, my students all have Procreate. Procreate has amazing brush technology that you can use its pen and you can adjust it and you can practice all kinds of scripts, including Nastaʿlīq script. A lot of online sources of kind of typing a word and getting a Nastaʿlīq printed for you are becoming kind of available. They're not the most beautiful. Definitely, there's not much customization, much control, but again, it's available. You can have access to it, and obviously, it's because of the developments that has been done in the background that can allow that to happen. This one specifically is Nastaʿlīq Online from Iran. There is a Nasta�λīq app you can download for your mobile phone. I have it on my iPhone. I don't know if it's there for Android or not, but type in your name and it will show you some ads and then it'll print it, give it back to you in Nasta�λīq script. Not too bad, actually. One of the most recent explorations in the digital territory is the Google font Gulzar. That was, I think it was created, I think, maybe about a year ago. Borna Izzat Pana is one of the usually ATypI researchers in the kind of Persian space. He oversaw the project. Fiona Ross from Brisbane University kind of was a consultant, and other designers kind of participated in that. So, and that is also available, and it's quite impressive on what they managed to accomplish. It's more of an Urdu typeface, which is not meant for kind of Persian audience. Like it does not reflect the aesthetics of kind of Persian Nasta�λīq, but it's quite close. These are some of the explorations that they did. And all the documentation is online, by the way. If you look at it, it's kind of quite extensive research that they did and exploration. It's quite impressive. a lot of third-party and kind of smaller organizations have stepped up to try to kind of fill the gap that dominant typographic kind of technologies have left kind of unattended, for lack of a better term. This is Mariam Software in Iran, and they have developed a number of different approaches. Their most recent one, that's called Qalam Bartar, which means kind of the better pen. You can do quite interesting manipulations of Nastaʿlīq typefaces, but it's more based for words and quotes, and not quite a kind of composition like a page, like a document. Amazing explorations have been done in Iran by designers there. This one is a Mirza typeface, and by Amir Mahdi Moslehi, who's currently doing research in Germany, if I'm correct. Extensive analysis, again, if you can look his name up online, on all the optional characters and everything that they have gone through to kind of explore the spaces and explore the diacritical positions. And the research that's been done is quite impressive. I'm kind of, in some ways, I'm kind of really kind of holding my breath, waiting where all these sporadic research that's being done by individuals, smaller companies, is going to come together, hopefully through large organizations like Linotype, Monotype. So it can be kind of disseminated properly and be accessed to everybody. So amongst these, I think the one that we can all point at that has done amazing leaps of technology, design, exploration, research is ATypI. Tasmim was part of the Adobe kind of package, which was discontinued for a lot of not so good reasons, if I may say, but it happened. And I'm in touch with Thomas Milo. He's working on amazing kind of approaches in the background. I'm not sure where we'll hear about these, but this is just a little sampler that he was showing me. Here's a composition done in Nastaʿlīq with a touch of a button. All the kashidas would change with the touch of a button. The spacing would change. It gives you kind of possibilities, like the ones that are darker are the ones that have changed, the ones that are lighter, say the ones that can be changed. So it is kind of thoroughly intelligent engine based on hundreds and thousands of research of documents and manuscripts that ATypI has done, has arrived at this interface. Just looking at these two by itself, these two parts of the interface, I have not seen that anywhere. You can control different levels of kashidas. What percentage of the document would you want to have extended kashidas? And you can adjust it, and you can look back and say, oh, that's a little bit too much. Okay, I want a little bit less. I want it to be tighter. I want it to be looser. It's just amazing. And I hope to see that sometime soon and access for the rest of us. Last but not the least, this is a experiment by Sina Fakour, who was also a regular ATypI presenter, on bringing the kind of more of a traditional calligraphic approach to the kind of digital tablet. So he put together kind of these two kind of digital kind of nibs, as we know, and Sawad is like is the interface that he's working on, and it's the closest thing I've seen to doing actual calligraphy in the kind of digital space. Even the pens that you can have with Procreate, it does not allow you that angle that this kind of a space can bring to you. Not yet, anyway. And also the pressure and sensitivity that he has is quite interesting. Okay, all right, last but not least, okay, what's happening? What are we looking at? So these are my kind of predictions, if I could say. Engaging artificial intelligence capabilities by developing a broad database of learning models. And when and how those learning models can be done is like really the question. As we know, the database data that goes into artificial intelligence, as if it's good data, good outcome. Lousy data, you know how that works. So that is something that I think is coming. Again, ATypI has developed technology that you can scan Arabic type and manuscripts, and you can decode it and analyze it, not just as an image, as actually elements of typography. So I'm sure other things are happening. So I'm kind of looking forward to see how that can happen. And then hopefully from there, the typefaces and the compositions will become intelligent. So they'll know if I'm putting these letters next to each other, and if I had too many Kushidas, means I want to have more Kushidas. So when I keep typing, it will just kind of give those to me automatically. To moving beyond Unicode, which I'm sure most of us agree that's like, it's been there a little bit too long and not much happening to it, towards from a kind of glyph-based thinking and mentality and shape-centric approach towards perhaps we would say grapheme or kind of grammar-based approach and contextual structure-centric paths. As I've seen in this conference, I'm so glad to see there's definitely multi-script products are becoming more of a hierarchy, more of a priority for a lot of dominant organizations and technologies. So kind of happy to see where that goes. The more research happens, the more products come out, the smarter and the more beautiful these things can be, and more practical and more pragmatic they become for average audiences. And broader data and technical sharing and collaborations with regional and indigenous type and design communities, I think is very, very important, because they have done significant approaches on these while the bigger companies had other priorities. So they have this knowledge, they've spent time, and they know the space, they know the culture, but without that kind of helping hand, they will just move slowly. And I think it's just a shame to not to have that kind of come to play. And just a little kind of summary of all the places Nastaʿlīq shows itself, a little bit of history. That's an image from the Iranian Revolution. You see it back there. The slogans are of Nastaʿlīq. Right next to it, contemporary fashion is from Nastaʿlīq. And a little bit of a real estate agency down there. If it's beautiful, it must be good. And of course, we gotta have a little bit of tattoo in there. So that's the whole space that Nastaʿlīq exists. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Pouya. That was absolutely beautiful. We're a little over. Unfortunately, we won't have time for questions, but just wanted to thank you again for sharing here. That was really some absolutely beautiful work.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So we're running a little bit over, but it wouldn't be ATypI if we weren't, so that's just where we are. I did want to briefly mention, again, just a huge thank you to our sponsors, our titanium sponsor, Font Bureau, our diamond sponsor, Adobe, and our platinum sponsors, FounderType, Monotype, and Morisawa. Without your support, we wouldn't be here, so thank you so much.